a Middle Eastern sounding song that's a little metal for you. Here you go. Those are the two that kind of fell flat for me, but that's 2 tracks out of 12. The rest of the album, and I'll tell you this, if we would have done this episode a week ago, I would have rated it lower than I did. So Lance was onto something when he said this album has to grow on you a little bit more. I'll be honest and say out of the 3 albums that we reviewed, this was the album that I spent pretty much almost all day today listening to again to make sure I really was going to give it at the score I was initially thinking I was going to give it, which I'm not. I'm actually going to bump that up. The only knock that I have on it is vocals on the album are either really, really, really good or like, dude, shut up. Maybe I'm being overcritical here. Maybe I'm being an asshole, but that's just what I heard on a couple tracks. I'm just like, dude, stop. Seriously. Is it me, Biv? Am I being an asshole here?
No, well, no, I don't think so. But I agree with you that there were certain tracks where the vocals were really outstanding, and there were other times when I just think they weren't necessary. It could have been addition by subtraction, just by maybe letting the instrument speak for a few minutes. But overall, I think it's a very solid CD. Jason, I give it a 4 out of 5.
That's exactly what I give it, and I give it a 4 out of 5 as well. And if you would have asked me to do this review last week, I probably would have said 3.5 out of 5. The reviews have been outstanding on it. It's a good CD, really good, and probably their best stuff. But there's a couple tracks that kind of fall flat for me, but there's some really accessible stuff in there. And, truth be told, there's a buddy of mine I was talking to who's into metal who hasn't heard our show yet, and so I'm going to beat the shit out of him when I see him.
Yeah, what's wrong with that guy?
But, I was talking to him about it. He's like, I've kind of not really been paying attention to what's going on in metal because I just don't have anything new that excites me. And I actually sent him a link to the Believer video, and he's like, okay, now that's badass. So if that gives you any indication, it's very accessible stuff, and this is not a guy who's a progressive metal fan. So it's a really, really good album, and I really, really encourage people to check it out if they haven't done that yet.
Absolutely, and if you want to find accessible, Holy Grail's new one, to me, is just, I know it's only February, Jason, but I'm going to say right now, this is, at least in the traditional metal category, this is a candidate for Album of the Year for me.
Wow. Actually, we're going to play a snippet of that real quick. Just what Biv said, he thinks it's an early contender for Album of the Year. Of course, that little snippet there was off of the opening track off of Holy Grail's new album. That was Crystal King. Great opening track. And you know me in opening tracks, they got to have something that drags me in, that hooks me. And this track does just that. Biv's a huge fan of this album. We've talked a little bit back and forth before we recorded the episode this evening. And he's just like, dude, Holy Grail, holy shit.
Yeah, exactly. And, James Paul Luna and Tyler Mayle. Luna, of course, is on vocals, Mayle's on drums. But both of those guys are ex-White Wizard members. And, they recorded the very first White Wizard CD back in 2008, along with John Leon, the founding member of White Wizard. And if you know anything about White Wizard, you know that John Leon is about as mentally stable as Axl Rose. So that didn't last too long. And Luna and Mayle and another gentleman as well, I think was the bass player, got together and formed Holy Grail. And since 2008, now Jason, I've compiled a list of bands that they have supported already in their young career. You ready for this?
Sure, go ahead.
The first one is, and this one is going to surprise you because you actually mentioned this band to me earlier today, and that's 3 Inches of Blood.
Dude, when I hear Holy Grail, especially Crystal King, I immediately think 3 Inches of Blood. That's the first thing. By the way, not to sidetrack you here, this album, this has no genre whatsoever. It's just freaking heavy metal. That's it. There is no category you can put it in. It's heavy metal, and the only thing that I get from a lot of their tracks is 3 Inches of Blood. Sorry, go ahead, Bev.
No, it is. It's straight up traditional metal. But they played at the Wacken Open Air Festival in 2010. They've opened for Blind Guardian, for Dragon Force, for Hell Yeah, for Anthrax. And this is a band that this is their third release. I mean, that to me is incredible.
That's a pretty big deal.
So it is. They have really paid their dues and just found their way, to the forefront of the metal scene. So if you're not familiar with them, you've absolutely got to check them out. I just think the CD all the way through, there is not, to me, one filler track. Jason, what do you think?
Ooh, I'm not going to go that far. Couple of highlights for me: Crystal King, Waste Them All Away, Descent, Into the Maelstrom. No More Heroes is a great track. Black Lotus, by the way, which is, ends the album with a 9-minute track. Really epic tune, really good stuff. I mean, there are 5 or 6 really killer songs on here. There's a couple that I can go, I could skip. Those Who Will Remain, nah. Apotheosis,
Oh, you're out of your mind.
But that's just me. Again, I know our score is gonna vary incredibly differently on this album. It's good. It's really good. It's 3 Inches of Blood meets Shadows Fall in some ways as far as some of the riffage. But it's very traditional heavy metal. It's got a definite groove to it. It's got a lot of melody, a lot of twin guitar stuff every once in a while. It's good. I'm not saying I wouldn't even put it close to something that I would make album of the year category. That's just me.
Well, earlier we were talking about when you said 3 Inches of Blood was what you got out of it, and I mentioned to you that I thought, at least on a couple of the tracks, that I got a little bit of theocracy out of it. And Apotheosis, on the back half of that track, the riff on it, to me, along with a little bit of No More Heroes, especially the riff on the bridge, are both they both scream theocracy. But no, I think in my opinion, this all the way through tracks 1 through 10, and no More Heroes, by the way, is a candidate. If this is a candidate for traditional metal album of the year, I'm going to say No More Heroes would be a single that I would consider single of the year in that category. Jason, I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5. It doesn't get any.
Wow. Well, that's interesting, folks. 5 out of 5. That's. I'm going to do 3.75 out of 5, and that's a big difference between the two of us. Look, the album's good, but dude, I'm not going to put it in that category yet. That's just me. But it's a good CD. I definitely recommend that people check it out. If you are just a traditional heavy metal fan, you're going to dig it.
And by the way, we didn't mention this, but the name of the CD, in case you want to look it up on Amazon or Spotify, is Times of Pride and Peril. It's just an awesome CD all the way through. So, speaking of awesome CDs, or what we're really hoping would be an awesome CD, is Heavy Crown by Last in Line. And as you know, or as you may know, this consists of all members of Dio's former band. Just with a different lead singer. And so, Jason, with a name like Last in Line, and with it out there that all of the members, except for Ronnie James Dio himself, of course, got together and formed this band, you would expect a very Dio-like sound, would you not?
I would, and I get both sides of it. First of all, there's a lot of people online who are absolutely butthurt over the fact that this doesn't sound like Dio. Dio's not singing. Well, no shit. Dio's dead. Sorry, this just in. But Andrew Freeman, who is kind of an unknown. I mean, he sang for Lynch Mob. He toured with Offspring. I mean, this isn't a guy who is a metalhead by any means, or somebody who is a big name in metal, steps in and does the vocals of Last in Line. But yes, you have the whole rhythm section of Dio. And Vivian Campbell said in an article, by the way, hey, look, we didn't really go out there to write a Dio tribute album, but it just kind of happens when me and Vinny and Jimmy all get together and write music. It just kind of sounds that way. And, with it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they transition as a band, because there are some songs in this album. In fact, we'll play one of them for you right now.
Make me a star maker, 'cause you've always been a giver, not a taker, but in our hearts, the sky's breaking.
That, of course, was a snippet off of Last in Line's newest album, Heavy Crown. That was Star Maker. Great track, very slow, kind of mid-tempo song, great chorus, very catchy. Parts of it sound Dio-esque, parts of it don't. But then there's other songs on the album that definitely sound like they're straight off of, Holy Diver, Last in Line. Well, let's just be real here, folks. This is not a Dio album, and it really pisses me off that you see, headlines in the news of the, Dio tribute band back together with Last in Line. And I get it, but I don't. And I'll say this, Andrew Freeman is not a guy who sounds like Dio. He sounds really good. But, if you wanted to have a guy who sounds like Dio, look, there's plenty of options out there.
Oh, there certainly is. Niels Patrick Johansson, the vocalist for Astral Doors, in fact, that whole band just screams Dio. In fact, you would swear they're like the Lost Basement tapes of Dio if you go listen to any Astral Doors CD. But if you really wanted another Dio band and you wanted to sound just like Dio, well, you just get Niels Patrick Johansson to do your vocals. But that isn't the case. They decided they probably wanted to do a little something different. They probably didn't want to tarnish, Dio's legacy any, and they decided to do their own sound. And I don't have a problem with it. And Jason, I totally agree with you. Star Maker's a great track. Martyr has some great vocals on it.
I love Martyr.
Yeah, that's a great track. Devil in Me has a very Whitesnake sound, early 80s. The one I have to call them out on is their bonus track, In Flames. That song to me just did not fit anywhere into the CD, and then they drop it right in the middle. I don't know if you noticed that, Jason. They dropped it right in the middle of the track listing. It's not like at the end where most bonus tracks are. They drop it in the middle of the CD.
I did notice that, but if we're being fair, with the title In Flames, anything with the name In Flames attached to it nowadays is going to be a disappointment. But even the track In Flames still sounds better than anything the band In Flames has done in 10 years.
I agree.
Last in Line could have just played a guitar riff and farted in a microphone, and you could have called it In Flames, and it would have sounded better than anything In Flames has ever done in the last 10 years, but I digress.
No, you're right. There's some really good tracks on here. Already Dead is kind of different than anything else on the CD too, but I really liked it. But then there's some filler. Burn This House Down, Curse the Day, Orange Glow. Those all I'm kind of So what's interesting about this CD, Jason, to me is that a lot of it sounds like if you step back into 1978 arena rock days. And then the other half of the CD sounds like it's, a 2016 band trying to make it onto the scene. It's almost like Last in Line has an identity crisis. Did you kind of get that feeling?
Yeah, no, I did. And I think it's going to be interesting because you have Vivian Campbell, you have Vinny Appice, you have Jimmy Bain, who sadly, Jimmy Bain just died a couple of weeks ago, the bass player. He's gone. So it'll be interesting to see what the next album for Last in Line is going to be, if they have a next one, because Jimmy's dead. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's really weird and no one really knows. It just happens. So I don't want to, talk about a guy whose, body's barely in the ground and talk about his replacement. But you have to go there and ask what that is going to be. Now, see, I disagree in some instances. I think the album has a lot more better tracks than filler. There's a lot more songs that stand out to me as really good songs. And, there's a couple songs. We actually said this together. because there's one track on the album, Blame It On Me, which sounds dead up vocally like Donnie Hamby. And if you know who Donnie Hamby is, you get an extra, bonus point or star or some love or shout outs on the next episode if you want to share with us on Facebook or on Twitter if you actually know who the hell that is.